Today I'm going to focus solely on the rear end of this car, the rear axle and differential and all that fun stuff. Now, this is a long story, and I guess this is a long video, so I can explain most of it. But this isn't the first rear end that I had. I called all the local junkyards before I bought new. I didn't want to buy a brand new one. I mean, I do want to buy a brand new one, but this is a budget build, so I figured I could just go pull one from a junkyard, for like $100 or $200. And I called the local junkyard, and guy's really nice, and he said that he had one, what I was looking for. I'm looking for an 8.5 inch, GM or Chevy rear end, out of a Camaro or like a Firebird. And so I called up there, and and I explained I needed it to be, 54 or 55 inches, hub to hub or larger. So I get up there, I bring it back home, not knowing whether it's posi or not. I didn't measure it in the yard, which is my bad. Brought it home. This isn't the one. It was another one. This is the second one that I went back and got. And as you can see, this is posi, but it's definitely sat in water for a very long time. I mean, this thing is horrible, but I paid $100 for it, and I figured, at least it's a start. At least I got the housing, right? I can just, tear all this stuff out and reuse the housing and put, a whole new unit in it with gears and whatever. Maybe I can use the axles out of it. So it is what it is. I brought it home. It was a mess. And I thought, it'd kind of be a challenge if I could save this thing and actually use it. Now, it has 2.56 gear ratio on it, which is basically made for highways. It's not geared, it's a high gear. It's not like a 410, which is the biggest that you can put in an 8.5 inch rear end. And I don't necessarily want a 410. I kind of wanted a 373 gears. That's a good mid-range. It's good all around. But I didn't get that, obviously, but that's fine. And I figured, if I want to change the ring and pinion and the bearings later on, I always have that option. But at least this is a good start. And for $100 or $150, I can't remember, it is what it is. So the more I got into this, I know that, rust is one thing. Rust is a problem. God knows how long this thing sat. It was out of a Camaro. But like I said, it was almost like a challenge. So this whole episode, I'm not going to talk through the whole thing. A lot of it is me doing what you're seeing right now. That's most of this episode. It is nonstop working on these gears, trying to refurbish them, and then ultimately, I get into some other stuff as well. Like I have to cut off the old perches. Those perches aren't any good for this car, obviously, because this is out of a Camaro. So I have to cut them off and get rid of any burrs or anything hanging out where they used to be. It needs to be as if nothing was ever there, which is kind of a challenge. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be that ridiculous, but I want it to look like, I am that way. I can't help it. I wanted it to look like the old perches were never on there. So I know a lot of you are going to think I'm, out of my mind to even bother doing this. And I know a lot of people are going to think like, well, why would you use a wire wheel in there? Like, you shouldn't be touching anything in there. But it's going to get disassembled, and everything's going to get cleaned individually. It's not like I'm keeping this in here and I'm going to try to run it like this. So, and there's another surprise later on that you'll see that you can't tell by looking at it right now. But I guess I'll just say it. That S spring that's in there, when you, like right now, it was locked up, so I never was able to turn it yet. And when I do eventually free it up and turn it, the other side of the S-spring is cracked. So at first I wasn't going to tear all this out and do all this. I was going to try to clean it up a bit and flush it all out and run it. But with that spring being broke, it gave me the opportunity to just tear the whole thing apart, which is ultimately what I do after doing this for about 6 hours. But don't worry, I don't film all of it, or else this video would be a lot longer. And this is even speeded up, 8 times 8, But this, this is what goes into it. I sanded each and every one of these teeth, with wool cloth and I don't even know, it's still wool cloth. I don't know if I'm even saying that right, but yeah, it got the surface rust off. I got into all the hard to reach places, and it sucks. No one wants to sit and do this for 6 hours. And of course, I'm spraying brake cleaner in between. But the more I did it, the more I thought, like, hey, like I can actually use this. Like, this is turning out to be okay. It's salvageable. Nothing was chewed up in there too bad. But there's kind of a before and after. But nothing was too bad to where it couldn't be saved. Well, not yet anyway, but we'll get to that. These 8.5-inch rear ends are really easy to work on. I don't know much about any car, but so far, knowing what I know, the little bit that I do know, I always knew I always preferred to work on GM vehicles because I've never. Well, I don't know why I preferred to, but I don't know anything about any other vehicles. I know a little bit about Jeeps because I've owned about 5 of them, but there's really nothing easier than working on Chevy, or GM products. But these things are built strong. Like, people, it's like mixed reactions when it comes to 10-bolt 8.5-inch rear ends. Everyone wants to go with the Ford 9-inch, but I mean, these things are badass. Like, I've seen 9-second cars with these in the back. I mean, I can say from any vehicle that I ever worked on, I prefer GM, and I had a lot of trouble with the hubs here. I could not get that cover off for the life of me, and it was so rusted shut. I think the way this sat in the junkyard or wherever it was before that, it sat in a puddle where this side that I'm working on was down in the water while the other side sat out, because only half of the inside of the differential was rusted, the other half wasn't. So it sat half full water. But I'll tell you what, this was not fun. I know that a lot of people struggle with these, and there's like different tricks of the trade to get it off. You can hammer it, you can beat on it. Me knowing that I wasn't going to use these again, I really beat the hell out of them, because why not? Why try to be careful and take 3 hours longer when you can just beat the hell out of it? And it did come off, as you can see. But yeah, it definitely wasn't a fun process. Put it this way, my lower back hurt really bad after leaning over this project all day. Every aspect of it, you're leaning over just enough to where it hurts. Yeah, everything was so rusted and decrepit in there that it just kind of came right out. The drums came out like it was nothing. So yeah, this is just obviously the cover. The differential cover was kind of banged up. It was nice at one time, and these things are cheap. It's not like I'm that cheap to where I couldn't buy me one of these, but it's like, if it can be reused, like, why not? And I'm glad that I put the 10 minutes of sanding into it that I did, because I just bent back a couple. That's from them jacking it up, obviously. It bit the hell out of that, and that's why, it helps to use a piece of lumber. But ultimately, I bent everything back as carefully as possible without breaking anything, and this thing, it didn't turn out too bad. Like, I'm glad I did it, because now I'm going to use it. Saved myself a whole $39, but when you're building a car, man, everything counts, because like it's never ending. Like, it's never ending. I spend a couple $100s a day, almost every day, just on something. By the way, I'm not a big fan of. I mean, red's okay, but I'm not like. It's not like it's my favorite color. The only reason I spray everything red is because I just have an overabundance of it from another project. So I might as well use it. I'm not into wasting money on paint either. If it all protects it, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I put about 4 coats on it, and I can always put another coat. I could always paint it black later on. I don't really care. But it looks like a brand new cover, and I'm happy with it. It'll serve its purpose. So now I took a little break. I needed a little break from working on the differential and the hubs, and I just decided to paint that real quick. But it's back to it, and everything, like I said, I think this sat in water this end, because I mean, these things may as well have been welded shut. There was no, I had to do this process and just pound it away. My even using my drill, my impact, it still wasn't, the impact still wasn't getting. We're on there. And I mean, I didn't even really need to take this off yet. I could have waited, because it wasn't hurting being on there, but it all had to come off eventually. So I think I did I got one with the impact there, but the rest were too buggered up to even bother. And I know a lot of you guys probably think, like, well, why the hell do you show like this process, like all this stupid crap, like you're just standing there doing this, like no one wants to see this. But like, I'm just trying to be realistic. Like, I film almost everything. Now, with that being said, there are a lot of things I leave out, because I am just in the moment and working, and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like putting my greasy hand in my pocket and hitting record right now. So I leave some stuff out, but for the most part, like, I film these processes and speed them up, because in reality, this is what you have to do. Like, I found out, okay, you can cheat in most professions. Like, you can cheat when you're decorating a house. You can make a house look good by throwing the right coat of paint on it. But when it comes to building a car, like, there's no half-ass. I mean, there are half-ass ways, don't get me wrong, but you have to work hard on it. Like, there's no way to get around it. And I just try to show the reality of what I'm going through with this project. Every step of the way, I'm learning something new, and I'm doing more and more. Like, I never ripped a rear end apart before. I never did this before. And right about here, let's see here. Bam! All right, that's where I snapped it. Now, I snapped the pin that holds in the carrier bolt, and the problem is half of that pin is threaded and the rest is smooth, and it broke off. I didn't realize it at this point. I'm still taking it out, and I thought everything was great, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to drop this pin out. I'll have this rear end ripped apart in about 5 minutes, because that's all it really takes, if that, to rip one of these rear ends apart. But in reality, in my reality, nothing is ever that easy. I broke the pin right at the end of the thread, so I was almost able to, like, I would have been able to just like pound it in or get it or pull it out, but it was still threaded the slightest bit in the end of the threads. And I'm going to show you in a second. I mean, you'll see where it is. Like, even at this point, I didn't know that it was broken off in there. And I was like, wow, all that turning, like all that wrenching, and it was only this long, and you can tell it's broke. It wasn't machined that way. So I pounded on the pin with a ratchet extension, and it started to crack. and you can see the pin going through there. And I had to keep sharpening my screwdriver, and I spent 4 solid hours just hammering into this thing. And I know you guys are all going to be like, that's the dumbest thing you can do. Like, you're going to ruin the whole differential, you're going to ruin the whole unit. And I was very, very careful. I did scuff it a bit, but it's nothing that's going to affect the way it works. But yeah, you can see I cracked through the pin, and I mean, you don't know what I went through with this. I worked on this for 8 hours straight. See, that's what the pin looks like. And you can see the threads, how they only go so far. It's the dumbest design. They don't do that anymore. Like, now they're just pins. And I had a heck of a time because that spring is cracked in there on the other side. It was a little bit tight, but I got that thing out, and I mean, it was like a victory when I got that out. I mean, something that should have taken 5 minutes took 2 solid days of messing with this to get it out. So there you can see the crack in the spring. Had that crack not been on that side, I wouldn't have even touched this thing. I would have cleaned it up, threw some gear oil in there, and I would have drove it like that. But, you know, everything is an opportunity. Every step of the way. I could be mad and get irritated, but like, it was a learning opportunity, you know. Like, I know how to fix it now. If my rear end ever goes, like, I can replace it now. I know how to do it confidently. That being said, I have to rebuild this one a little bit, and I am. The parts are on their way as we speak. Actually, 2 of them showed up today, but that will be in the next film. I'm not gonna like go too into the rear end on the next film, because that's all this episode is about. So don't worry, I won't do that to you. But I figured, like, it's a vital part of the car. You really should know, kind of like, it's a big step of this project. So I figured I'd document all of it. You can see the one's all rusty, the one axle there, and that's because that's the one that sat in the water, obviously. So I have some cleaning up to do on this thing. And anyone who's done this before knows that this is very tedious. This isn't something that you can do in 5 minutes. But I mean, I wire weld this thing down to basically bare metal in every crevice, you know. I don't show the entire process because I know that it's painful to watch, but this goes on for quite some time. And whoever had this axle before me welded the axles, or like the tube in there as well, so it doesn't twist. Yeah, I don't know why I'm actually even doing this part yet, but I mean, whether you do it now or later, I guess it all, you know, works out because it's done. But I didn't cut the perches off yet. But this rear end, really, it looked worse than what it was. Like, it was very much, you can see the rust on the inside there. I had to get that out too, but it was very much surface rust. Like, it wasn't too bad. Now, initially, I'm not gonna lie, I had all this on film. I was cutting these perches off, you know, around the axle, like I was going along the turn, you know, where it's welded to the axle, and I was trying to go in that way until I realized, like, this is just the easier route, just cut it straight across and then kind of snip it piece by piece, like at every angle, which you'll see what I mean in a minute. That doesn't sound like it makes much sense, but this was, like I said, all learning experience. Like, you could watch a million YouTube videos, and, you know, people do things differently, and everyone says it's the right way. It's just like, as long as it gets done, to me, I don't really care if it's the right or wrong way. If it gets done, and it works, then it's right to me. I mean, I could have cut, there was probably easier ways to cut this off or whatever. This grinder I have, by the way, is like so old, and it's so chintzy. Like, it gets scalding hot, like within the first 5 minutes of using it. Like, it gets so hot that you can't, you have to wear gloves. Which, I mean, I guess you should be wearing gloves when you're doing this anyway, but the only reason I have these gloves on is because the gear oil, and whatever. I was messing with the differential, so I just kind of left them on. But yeah, I mean, I cut the sides, and then, in the middle where it was welded, I don't show the process, but I flipped this upside down. I hit it with a hammer, and they came right off. And then, obviously, this is what I meant by like chipping away at the angles. So yeah, I mean, that's really close, and then it wasn't that hard to grind the rest of that off. It's like a 10-minute process. Yeah, it's really hard. I can't even tell where the old perches were. So that's it for now. I mean, I still have to obviously rebuild the unit and put everything back together. And then, yeah, there's a lot more to it, but I am happy with where it's at. And when the new perches come in, we will be sanding some of that red off and welding the new ones on to our liking, and all that is to come. But I didn't want to drag this episode out any longer, so until next time, thanks for watching.